Good evening, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order and ask the city clerk to call the roll, please.
Doesn't look like she's here, Mayor. I can call roll.
Okay.
Jeff Elsoff.
Here.
Dr. Joel Schroeder.
Here.
Justin Smith.
Here.
John Welch.
Present.
And Diane Wynn. You have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't realize she had stepped out. I saw her there and she's not there. So, okay, thank you. For evening opening prayer, Bel Aire resident Mike Posen is here to lead us.
Thank you. Father, we thank you so much for this day. Father, we thank you for the coolness. Father, we think of the coolness and the change to fall and just the beauty that comes with that. And just thank you that we live in the part of the country where we can appreciate the change of colors and seasons. And Father, we also know that this is a very busy time as students are heading back to school and lots of activity that are going on in the community. We just continue to pray for your health protection on all the students, Father, as they head back. Father, we thank you for the mayor, Father, for the council members, for the city administrator and staff, and Father, for their leadership for this community. We pray your blessing on them. Father, we bring to you the discussions, the agenda, the things that need to be decided and discussions need to take place. Father, we pray that you would just grant them wisdom, Father, that you would give them discernment as they make decisions, Father, that they may benefit the community, the residents, the businesses within Bel Aire. And Father, we thank you for Bel Aire and the community. And we pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is determine agenda additions. Are there any additions to consider? Hearing none, I'll move on to the consent agenda. This contains the minutes of August 3rd meeting, in addition to a revised paving petition for Rock Springs 3rd, Phase 2, as well as the required amending resolutions for this project. Are there any questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
I'm question items B and C, and I think this is a question for our attorney. Will that affect in any way our questioning we can do on item 12D, where we're actually voting for the repairs to be done? They're not repairs, the roads to be built.
Let me look at item 12D, but I know that you can put your resolution as far as item C. You can put, and you can put your revised petition. You can put both of those items on your consent agenda.
I'm just wondering if it has any restrictions on what was bid on.
No,
No.
It doesn't
so we
affect
can
the
leave it in
restrictions.
consent agenda then.
correct. If you're more
Okay.
comfortable pulling it off and addressing it as an independent issue, just you alone can request that.
Well, I wasn't sure if we should pull it off or not because I did want to talk about why we changed some things during the bid process. So if these didn't affect the bid process, then I'm okay with them.
Correct. They did not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Welch and a second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item 7A, consideration of appropriation ordinance. During the reporting period, there's $433,000 from the Capital Improvement Reserve Fund for several projects. Projects include pavement markings and slurry seal. So is there a Any discussion? And pavement of Batten, which is good that we're finally done with that project. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve appropriations ordinance 21-15.
I have a motion from Dr. Schroeder. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second from Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item 8 is city requested appearances. We have representatives from Garver Engineering here to update us on the Woodlawn project.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City staff. We are here to give an update on the wonderful Woodlawn Utility Coordination Relocation Project, and then also we're getting close to the KDOT portion, so we're talking about the steps coming up next and then how that's going to go about. So let's dive right on in. As always, we're going to start off with a safety statement. As you can imagine, drive through the corridor, or as you've seen, I'm sorry, you see a lot of the traffic control devices have been removed. A lot of the work through the whole corridor.
Is your mic on? Is your mic on? I'm not hearing you really well. So,
It's green over here. I assume it's
Okay.
on.
thank you.
Just need it closer. Sorry. I apologize.
You need one of those telescopes.
Yeah, right. It's okay. Traffic control, the channelizers through the corridor, as you probably drove through, a lot of them have been removed. Most of the work is just down to the Perryton to Danbury stretch. We figured since we're not working in there, let's get that back open and get normal traffic flow and less congestion. It looks a lot better when you're cruising through there now. We do have the shutdown on Woodlawn. That is going. I'll get into details on that. There at Perryton. First responders, we've been coordinating with them, especially with this shutdown. It's right by the fire station. Going to work with Chief Atterbury and the fire chief as well, make them know what's the game plan, where we're at, how we're giving their access in and out. Likewise with Woodlawn Courts, a one-way access there as well. So working with them. And then lastly, the construction team, what they're doing on lines 2, 3, and 4, the remaining lines, it is a deep trench. Some soils are not as favorable as we like, groundwater there. So they're using extra shoring and protection such as that. So everyone has safety at the top of their mind there. As far as progress, when you look at the working days, we're at 92% complete. So that's a great number. I'm sure everyone's starting to like those numbers better, especially with the KDOT portion going to let in September. They are on schedule with the work that's been modified and changed. We're looking at an early September completion, substantial completion. From there, it'll just be testing, but that won't impact traffic at all. And we'll wrap that up. There we go. So this slide used to be the items completed. Well, we're at the point of the project of what's left to be done. We're getting down there to the nitty gritty. So we got lines 2, 3, and 4. Line 2 is at Perryton. Line 3 is at Odessa. Line 4 is at Danbury. They did start the shutdown last week as a plan. There's a lot of notifications. I know the city did a great job posting on all their social media, making everyone as aware as possible. Likewise, the construction team, we're handing out door knockers and notifications, et cetera, to those impacted and trying to make it as easy as possible. I just want to say, whenever we do a full closure, it's the last resort. No one wants to do that. We vetted as much as we can. We have a great team there. Everyone's sitting there scratching their head and brainstorming. So I do apologize that this is happening, but at the same time, I think it's the best for the project and the project's coming forth that we had to do this. So I appreciate everyone helping out and being considerate of that. We're working with the school boards and everyone like that, and letting them know and keep them involved. There is groundwater going on. We're going to phase this construction out to lessen the impact. The biggest thing is what we talked about in our progress meeting last week is when we do these lines 2, 3, and 4, as soon as we get to a point where we can open this road back up, we may have some ancillary stuff on the exterior that they can do safely without this shutdown. We're going to get to there as quick as we can, as safely as we can, and get that road back opened up to where they can wrap it up on the exterior and get traffic back flowing normal there. So this is just a diagram kind of showing what we got going on here. Like I said, line 2, 3, 4, we're going to phase this out in 2 different phases. Right now, the barricades, some of you are probably aware, it's on the north edge of the Perryton drive there. And then we got the other barricades there south of the fire entrance. That's going to be approximately 15 to 20 working days. Like I said, it started last week. And then once they get that road buttoned up and back to safe condition, we'll flip that shutdown over there just in line 4, which is pretty minimal. And I kind of broke those out so we can kind of see isolated where we're working at. And this is it. This is the last 3 lines we got on this job. Everything else has been completed, tested. Bacteria test came out great first time around. Pressure test came in great. So we're trying. We're almost wrapped up and getting there as quick as we can. And here we just want to show a little bit more of why these are taking the amount of prep work it is. They are tied in there, and I got a graphic later on in the presentation kind of showing what's all going on in this corridor. We got to get down in there and get our tapping sleeves on, get those prepped, and that's pretty much all they've been doing the past week and a half, getting everything ready to rock and roll so that when we shut this down, it's efficient as possible. But with Mother Nature here recently, the rains, that's every time they come back to the job site the next day, the silt just falls in there. So they got to spend time cleaning that all out and getting the pumps running. They got pumps running 24/7 to get this water out of here. And so it's been quite eventful. This is there on Odessa. It'll be line 3. You can kind of see the pump down in the water. And these are deep trenches. The soils and groundwater make it a little bit more unsecure. So they actually got hydraulic trench braces in there to keep everyone safe, keep them protected. And line 4 is the north one at Danbury, and this one's not as bad, but still got the pump. The guy with his back to us there, he has a pump behind him. And just get on his prep work ready. Don't want to waste more time having the shutdown than we need to. So doing what we can. So this looks like someone kind of got confused with what a rainbow should look like a little bit, but what we want to show here is how much is going on. There's a lot of utilities, which is normal, but that's why there's so much process and what we've been evaluating how to proceed here. Each color represents a different type of utility. We got our storm sewers, sanitary sewers, gas, fibers, electric, a lot of stuff going on. Proposed storm sewers. And as you can see in that graphic on the left, the existing ground's that top contour. So they're about 12 to 14 feet deep. We're going to be crossing Woodlawn here and getting under this proposed storm sewer. So that was our concern of doing this half and half or looking at everything else is they're really deep and it's just a tight area. So this is why it kind of resulted here and just the congestion of everything going on, trying to make the best of what we can. So what's next? Like I said, we'll be wrapping up the utility coordination here in a little bit and Relocate's wrapping that up, getting the testing done, expecting early September for that. The KDOT portion is scheduled to let on September 22nd. So I'm pretty excited for that. I know Ann is as well, to find out what contractor is going to be a part of this team and get rock and rolling on this thing and deliver this project. KDOT has dictated the working days. It's 320 working days. And their specs, whatever your allotted working days is, justifies a certain amount of cleanup days. And so that, with this project, it'd be 40. So we're looking at 360 days is what's contracted. So once we get the letting done, we know who we got. There's an early and late start on the contract. That could be, I believe it's October is the early start and November is the late start. So once we get the contractor on board, we know who he is, we know, or he or she is, and we know when they want to start. They have that time frame to choose themselves. That's when we'll get our pre-con scheduled, have our discussions, see their schedule, see what's going on. The plans do have a phasing plan to it on how they're approaching this job. But we want to see how the contractor is going to take that and tie it into an actual time frame and be able to relay that information to you all. Once we get that, we'll have a public kickoff meeting, which I'll work with Ann and Ty and make sure we get everyone invited that needs to be invited. It's a great opportunity for the contractor and us and the city to explain to everybody how we're approaching this, what's going to look like, traffic control. It is going to be congested, but give everyone a chance to be aware and cognizant of what's going on and have some participation discussions. We're always there to listen and see what we can do to make it better. And then after that, we'll get moving on it. So just wrapping up, I know I keep this on here because utility relocations are fun and they do impact a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of traffic control. There's been shutdowns. Thank you. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to citizens for working with us. We're doing the best we can and moving along. If you look at this project and all the different water lines we've tied into, the size of them, how many residents are actually fed off of that when you shut them down. There's some that are over 1,200, either companies or residents on them. And I'm pretty proud to say the team did pretty good as far as having those shutdowns, working through the night and the minimal amount of calls. I know we had a few. I don't want to say that's expected because you don't want to have none. But I think it went pretty well for what it could have been. So we'll carry that momentum on to the KDOT job and deliver that and get this thing rolling. So with that, I'll stand for any questions for anybody.
Very good. Thank you. Does anybody have questions? Yes, we appreciate the help, and we're looking forward to getting started with real construction. Once you
Absolutely.
Get down with the waters.
Thank you.
Item 9 on the agenda is a public hearing. So as part of the IRB process, a public hearing is required on August 5th. Public notice for hearing was published in the Ark Valley News and mailed to the relevant local taxing authorities. This hearing gives interested parties the ability to address council on tax abatement and the IRB issuance. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on this topic? Hearing none, is there a motion to close public hearing?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
I'll
Welch.
make a motion to close the public hearing.
I have a motion by Mr. Welch. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Elsoff. And I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item 10 is citizens' concerns. I have a request from Ms. Bonnie Stetson to speak to the council.
Good evening. Glad to see that Mr. Welch is back with us and doing fine.
So are we.
My name is Bonnie Stinson. I live at 3800 North Harding. And tonight I'm going to comment a little bit about the proposed budget and what's gone on. And I was happy to see that the council was pursuing a mill levy reduction. It's still not there yet, and I know that. The 22 budget will still be 6% more than the 21 budget, okay, in revenue, taxes collected. The increase in the franchise fees was never openly discussed. The details would only be shared individually at a later time. The fact is, council raised the franchise fees on the water and the sewer 6% each for a total of 12%. This is 12% that will be passed on to the residents. In addition to the water fees, there are scheduled, in addition to that, the water and sewer fees are scheduled to go up 3% anyway next year. So next year we'll have a 6% increase on those. And earlier this year, we increased a 1% to Waste Connection. So now we're up to 19% is the bottom line for residents here. And this is going to be moved on to their water bill that's been called holistic. With that 12% being transferred to the general fund as a resource of revenue. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because that's the way I understood it, okay? And every year, the process of preparing the budget, there's always a reserve surplus available for non-reoccurring expenses. And I'd like to know how the $30,000 employee recognition policy qualifies as a non-reoccurring when it is added to a salary expense, which would lead me to believe it's going to happen every year, not just one time. I feel I also need to respond to Ted's comment about 700 tons of gravel being used on the gravel roads. His comment was, so it shows what we're doing for gravel streets versus paved roads. I can assure you There has not been 700 tons of gravel used on our residential gravel roads. This year, Public Works built a back road to the Public Works building. The entrance is located off of Denise Avenue in Farmstead. Public Works drives their equipment down this road, so it had to be a pretty substantial road to take care of their equipment that they're driving on. In addition, they installed a gate, and I'd also be curious to know if a study was done to build that road. We like studies. The city expressed their opinion that adding the milled asphalt was not a good idea for Aurora Park when we asked for it back in June of 2020. But the milling had already been used to build a road at the Bresch site, which is now closed. I would be curious to know the number of maintenance workers it took to build those roads, and I'd also like to know the number of hours spent building these two roads. In February, I noticed that the city paid $8,000 to remove a pile of asphalt. I assume at the Bresch site because that was sold. Perhaps that could have been available for use on Aurora Park roads. And I don't even know where that asphalt came from. That's all I have to say. I've provided you with a picture of where that road is, a little breakdown of what I feel like has been spent on roads, ponds, landscaping, and sidewalks. All of none are in our area. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Lasher, can you clarify the franchise fee? What did we actually raise it to?
So, actually, I think, does that include?
That's something Ted could better explain.
Ted's actually got a budget
So in,
presentation tonight
oh.
that he'll be going over to hopefully
Okay,
help
well,
some of
if
that.
You may
I don't
address it right now, I can.
I don't want to jump ahead of the budget presentation. If you're going to address it there, let's do that. Okay.
I wasn't, we can do either, but if it's fresh on your minds, we
Yeah.
can do it now.
Okay.
There's a difference between, I think what Ms. Stinson or anybody might be confused about a franchise fee on like if you look at your gas bill, it's a line item on your gas bill, which that doesn't happen in Bel Aire. There's no line item that says franchise fee on your bill. The only thing it does is it's a line item in our budget. So I guess you could say that's what it is. Usually we, for the last 3 years, and don't quote me, maybe at least 3 years, we've transferred $100,000 as a franchise-free fee from both our water and sewer accounts to our general fund. That is about 3% of gross sales. We just chose that number. This year we decided to do 6%. So it's not increased 6%. It's from 3 to 6, which I believe off the top of my head, and I can go get the numbers, but I believe it's about $60,000. So it's like $160,000 from each water and sewer instead of $100 transferred to the general fund. That's the only move that we had in water and sewer funds as far as franchise fees go.
So the bills did not increase by the franchise fee increase?
I mean, that the bills aren't going to
residents?
increase more than what the automatic increase set by policy is going to be of
The
a
annual
3%. Yes.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify that because I wasn't sure how that worked. So
And then the bonus structure, I think actually all of that is an actual bonus, not an increase in pay. It is maybe a Christmas bonus or anything that's designed. So that's what makes it a one-time transfer is the bonus aspect. And the 700 tons of gravel, I can research it. I might have misspoken. I see a line of general fund or my general ledger expenses. I see how many tons we did. I was just counting up in my head and might have mentioned it. I didn't mean it as a political statement. It was more of wow, that seems like a lot of gravel. So I'm sorry if I misspoke on that issue as well.
Thank you. Appreciate the explanation. Any other citizens' concerns? Hearing none, I'll move on to council member reports. Start with Dr. Schroeder.
Well, this last weekend I played in a tournament in Bel Aire, so that was fun. My team got absolutely smashed, if anyone was wondering. But we had teams from Houston and Oklahoma and Nashville and all over the country come and play. So that was good to see that kind of activity going on in Bel Aire.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Elsa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to keep my report brief. I guess I just have two things I'd like to just share. So I've got 4 children, all of them grade school age, and all 4 started at Isley last week. So I got a kindergartner and a 5th grader and 2 in between. And so our family's just really excited to start the school year and meeting and greeting the teachers and just getting to know them. And so we're in full school mode. So we're super excited about that going forward.
Great.
And then also I just wanted to mention, I did attend the National Night Out Saturday night, and that was really wonderful. We weren't sure if we were going to go. We decided to go, and it had been hot most of the week. And right as we got there around 6 o'clock, and it just started to cool down. The clouds came out, and then the sun was at an angle where there was plenty of shade out there with the trees and everything. So I got to meet some of our new officers. It was really great. The police have a new drone, and they did some demo with that. That was pretty neat, pretty interesting capability that our police department has now. We have an officer that serves part-time in Bel Aire from Benton, and he is a canine officer. So we met the police dog Rocky, and he did a bunch of demos where he's uncovering things and then chasing down Lieutenant Fox and biting him on the arm. And that was really cool to see. So, the fire department was out there with the fire engine and the fire hose. And there was a couple of bounce houses for the kids. Kansas Fish was there with a fishing demonstration for the kids. Cabela's had an archery range and a BB gun booth set up, which is really neat. And one of the bounce houses was like an inflatable slide, and they had a hose set up to make it a water slide. And pretty sure nobody on the water slide had swimming suits, including all of my kids. And my kindergartner was a little reluctant to get on there until he saw the giant mud puddle forming at the bottom of it. And then it became a mudslide. So yeah, I couldn't get our kids off of that thing while we were there. So anyway, it was a really great night. It was great to see the police out there. There were a lot of officers, and I think there was just a lot of citizens out there happy to see what was going on. I think there were a lot of people that maybe had never been to one before or hadn't met many of our officers. So it was a really great night. So
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On August 6th, I attended the K254 Corridor Association meeting along with a couple of other council members. Wilson and Company has done a study of the K254 corridor where they examined the features of the roadway and some of the safety features that are currently there as well, and prepared a report for KDOT identifying some short-term improvements that they felt could be made to improve the safety of K254. A couple of highlights of those were some changes to how stop signs are deployed. They talked about how they found a correlation between the distance the stop sign was from the roadway and the frequency of crashes at those intersections, as well as some pavement marking deficiencies where they believed pavement markings could be significantly improved to eliminate some driver confusion and make it more clear as to where drivers were supposed to be, especially around the turn lanes that are in the median. So it was a really interesting presentation. They talked more about the short-term goals and talked about how this study would lay a foundation for a broader, longer-term program that would be administered through KDOT as part of a corridor program. And so this kind of set the stage to kick off further discussion and further efforts around improving the safety of K254. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
My only report is I also attended the K254 meeting, and I think Justin covered it all. So
You did. I think so. Thank you. So mayor's report. So I understand that upcoming Labor Day weekend, our city manager, Ty Lasher, will be having a birthday. So happy birthday to Mr. Lasher. Speaking of Labor Day, I do hope everyone has a safe and relaxing holiday. This is the last meeting before Labor Day. So hope everybody does enjoy the time off. I also attended the K254 meeting with council members Welch and Smith, and Mr. Smith did a good job of reviewing a lot of the things that are going on. There was a much longer list of things that they're talking about. So it was very interesting to hear what the K254 study came up with. So next step is corridor management plan. I understand Mr. Lasher is going to work on getting that going and working through the K254 Development Association to do that and see if we can't get that moving along. That will end up being a master plan that will aid KDOT and it's the improvements that they will be doing along K254 over years to come. So that's a very cool thing. It's just a long process, but it's cool that we can get it done. I also attended a WAMPO meeting on August 10th, and there's yet another program of federal funds called HIP. It's about 1.2 million. I don't know if there's any opportunity for us to participate in that, but I know that our city manager is looking into that possibility. Cities of Hayesville and Park City gave overview presentations. I did not know that Park City was established the same day as Bel Aire. They have the same birthday. So, and WAMPO also updated the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan. This includes the right turn lanes at Rock Road that was discussed in the 254 Corridor Development Association meeting. I think I glossed over that because I was really relying on or thinking that Mr. Smith had covered that, but he didn't talk about those particular things. But there is going to be a bid letting for right turn lanes at Rock Road and at Adams Road, which is out near, is it Benton? I think it's near Benton to Adams Road. And that bid letting will be in December, so we'll see those improvements sometime early next year, hopefully. On Saturday, my wife and I also attended the Bel Aire Night Out. I think we missed Mr. Elsoff. I think we just didn't hit the right time. I think we probably were leaving at the time he got there, but I echo all the things that were going on there. It was good. It was a good thing for everybody, and Rocky was keeping quite busy that night. So if he'd already done an hour of presentation before you got there. Okay, so he was a very, very busy dog. So, there's also good information from the tree board, KDOT, and DUI Kansas for presented there. That was done in community room, in fact. So previously we said that Bel Aire was good to host the Sedgwick County Association of Cities on September 25th. That has now been moved to January 8th as the Sedgwick County Association of Cities has an opportunity to tour the new Kansas Health Center in downtown Wichita. So we've moved that out. So on COVID, Kansas just reached 50% vaccinations with at least one dose. So we all know there's an uptick in infections. However, in the last 2 weeks, it looks to have leveled off, and we hit a peak at 9%. And as yesterday, it was at 8.2%. So that's nothing near the 20% we saw back in November. So it's a bit early to predict where that will go. Certainly, it might be reasonable that this was the peak, as it's about half of the number of November, and we have 50% of the population vaccinated. So don't know that. Only time will tell what the future is going to bring on that. But it looks a little bit hopeful that we're going to see some improvement there. So please continue to be safe, wash hands often, practice social distance, and wear a mask if you're not been vaccinated. Let's continue to support each other. And at that, I'll ask our city attorney for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to follow up on an item that came up during last week's workshop related to the revision of the ballot questions. We talked about whether Councilmember Welch's seat should have been on the ballot in 2020. So Mr. Welch was appointed in March of 2020, and the question was raised that November there was a general election. Should he have been on it? And the answer is no, because for several reasons. I'm going to point out three. One, the motion was voted on as documented in the minutes. The minutes reflect that John Welch was appointed to fill a seat with an understanding that the seat would be for 2 years and he'd be up for election in 2021. That was together with the motion. So that understanding was there at the time. Secondly, the vacancy policy addresses, though the vacancy policy addresses how to fill out a vacancy, it doesn't address the term of that vacancy. It cites Charter Ordinance 17 when it talks about the term. And Charter Ordinance 17 says that a person who is appointed shall serve until the next regular city election. Well, state statute defines regular city election as being held on, and I'm going to read the language, the Tuesday following the first Monday in November of each odd-numbered year, comma, and even-numbered years if needed. The if needed portion is vague, but that's spelled out in the Secretary of State standards, which state that city, community colleges, and school board elections that shall fall on odd-numbered years unless the city provides charter ordinance or home rule evidencing otherwise. So we do not have a charter ordinance or home rule in place that says that we shall have elections on even-numbered years. If we needed to do it, we could do it, but as a standard, our regular elections are on odd years. And so council members appointed to fill a vacancy shall serve until the next odd year election, unless it's specifically stated otherwise. And even prior to this, Councilmember Nguyen was appointed in 2015 and served until November 2017 when that seat that she was filling was up. So that's the way we've done it. It's for this council to decide if we should continue to do it that way, or if you had hoped that a vacancy shall be filled until the next available election, whether a city election or a state or a national election. We can adjust if you decide you want to address it differently. And that's all I had.
Thank you. I appreciate the research and information there. That's very, very helpful. Sorry. Thank you. I appreciate the research and information. Very helpful. Thank you. Move on to city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a few items I wanted to cover. First of all, I wanted to congratulate our Director of Communication and HR, Tristan Terhune, for being selected as a 2021 marketing professional by the Wichita Business Journal.
Very good.
I think they typically choose about 20, so we're proud of that and of her. We are starting to see 2020 census information come out. And so we've got population data now. And on April 1st of 2010, Bel Aire's population was 6,769. And on April 1 of 2020, Bel Aire's population was 8,262, which equates to a 22% increase in 10 years. So I think we all kind of knew that with all the developments you continue to review and see additions coming in, all the new homes, but that's a pretty substantial increase for a city. And like I said, we are now, I believe, the fourth largest city in Sedgwick County. So that's pretty impressive, the growth that the city's had. I did want to mention, as the mayor stated, that City Hall will be closed, or city offices will be closed on September 7th for Labor Day. And then also I wanted to follow up, since it was mentioned a few times about the KDOT 254 Corridor Association meeting. On September 9th, KDOT will be holding a local consult meeting, and that will be here at Wichita State from 9 to 1. And basically what they're doing, they have a number of these scheduled throughout the state, and they're basically listening to citizens, local governments for projects, and they're looking for support. And the reason I'm bringing that up is obviously the 254 Corridor Association, Bel Aire, a number of cities will be there, but it's also good for citizens to attend those, because there's often legislatures there that are actually going to help KDOT with the funding of these projects. And the reason it's important for Bel Aire is KDOT is proposing an interchange at Webb Road and 254. So they're actually proposing that. As the council member and mayor have mentioned, at the safety study, that safety study also looked at not only the interchange, but also an overpass at Rock and an overpass at Greenwich, and then some connecting frontage roads. So what we as the city are going to be requesting, and we'll be working with Sedgwick County, is all three of those as one project. And so that's why it's important that we be there, and citizens that have an interest of some traffic improvements there. That safety study did show that those were the top three most dangerous intersections, obviously because of all the traffic. So KDOT has said they feel that those three projects would have a good possibility of getting funded. And so we're going to be there, and I would encourage any citizens that would like some additional information about that and would be interested in going as a citizen to talk about the safety, the concerns they have, for KDOT and the legislatures to hear that, and that will help us with those types of improvements. So
Do we know what time of day that will be?
it'll be 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And like I said, I know the county will be there. I'm sure the mayor or someone from our council will be there. K254 will be there. But like I said, it's always good to have just citizens that can go to those and say, I'm a citizen. I've witnessed or I've experienced crashes or whatever, and would support that. That's always very beneficial for the legislatures to hear that. So
Great.
So thank you, Mayor.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate the information. Move on to ordinance resolutions and final actions. So the first item is the Bel Aire budget. So the council held a final discussion on the proposed 2022 budget at our August 10th workshop. The adoption process requires the mill rate and total revenues, expenditures calculated and published. This action approves the summary numbers and mill rate to be published and schedules a public hearing for our next meeting. Line items can be adjusted with the budget and dollars lowered before the final budget is approved. However, the total numbers and mill levy cannot be increased once published. So our finance director, Ted Henry, is here to give the summary presentation.
Mayor Benaj, council members, I'm going to try to give a brief overview of our budget. As you know, we could spend 3 hours talking about every little piece, but feel free to ask questions at the end. Every budget starts with goals. We've adopted four primary goals for the 2022 budget. The first one is to adopt a lower property tax or mill levy. The second is to find ways to increase funding for street improvements. The third is to provide quality services with efficiency. And the fourth is to sustain fiscal stability. On the revenue side, the budget anticipates a little under $7 million in revenues. As you can see, 50% of all revenues are generated from property taxes. If you combine these with sales tax and other taxes, that represents 75% of total revenues. And the other 25% of revenues comes from franchise fees, permits, licenses, fines, recreational fees, grants, and other revenue sources. It's hard to talk about the budget without mentioning all the development that's going on. People and businesses are choosing Bel Aire to build, and the city is growing. This type of growth translates in more demand for city services. At the same time, it produces an increase in total assessed value. Sedgwick County estimates us to grow 8% for the budget year in 2022. From the upward trend of total assessed valuation, growth has allowed us to decrease the adopted mill levy from 45.73 to 44.5. The bottom figure kind of shows how Bel Aire stacks up to other communities in the area. As you see, we're right in the middle when you consider total mill levy. It's also good to point out while we're here that only 30% of the total property tax bill actually comes to Bel Aire, with the remaining amounts going to the state, county, school district, and other taxing authorities. The next slide shows sales tax collections, which represent 22% of our general fund revenues. The city of Bel Aire doesn't have a sales tax, but receive a portion of the Sedgwick County 1 cent sales tax. last April or May, I think we all felt that this might be the area that's going to decrease due to COVID-19. But we've seen a greater, instead we've seen a greater than usual returns in 2020 and 2021. With the federal government stimulus program set to expire in early 2022, I do not, and the 22 budget does not depend on growth in this area. Before we dive into the expense side of our budget, I might click through a few slides that show the result of what we're actually funding here. Most people, want safe neighborhoods, a well-built home, quality infrastructure, clean parks, planned open spaces, maybe throw in a few quality recreational or educational activities for the kids. And that's kind of where we're at. The city tries really hard to provide these things. And going through the budget process every year reminds me, I have 3 daughters. One's a 5-year-old, and I have 2 2-year-old twins. And I think sometimes budgeting feels like when my wife and I try to take a picture with them, not everybody's looking in the right direction. Sometimes you can get by on that, but when everybody's looking in the right direction, that's where the real beauty is. And that's where I think roads come in place in our budget. I felt every council member expressed the way to improve the condition of our local streets, and we're trying our hardest to do so on the expense side. The city will spend a little over $7 million next year. 90% of this spending is used from what some people call core governmental services. 2.5 million or 35% of the total will be used on general debt and land debt payments. 1.5 million or 22% will be used for police officers and court officials. 11% or almost $800,000 will be used as pay-as-you-go street improvements. 20% of all spending will be used for general government, such as planning and zoning department that ensures buildings are safe and codes are enforced. Also funding finance people like myself, HR people, the city council, city manager, city attorney, our wonderful clerks, the facilities we operate in, liability insurance, utilities, and so on and so on. Probably the most visible element of our city costs about 10% of all spending. These include the parks, the recreation, public grounds, senior center, and community development. So the budget highlights, in summary, 2022 budget will adopt a lower property tax. We will either invest $1 million in pay-as-you-go street improvements or take advantage of the historic low interest rates to address large-scale projects such as the complete reconstruction of 53rd Street or other priority-based projects. The 2022 budget calls for efficiency by not allowing no new positions, but it rewards quality service by funding merit step increases and providing funds for the changes taken into action earlier this year. All this, at the end of the day, we still maintain 30% of revenues in reserve for unexpected rainy days. I think Garver probably stole my show here, but I just really wish some people would see what's underground and how much it takes and how much effort and components are needed to bring service to a house. This is my small effort. We could spend 3 workshops talking about water and sewer, but this is kind of the overview. As you can see, all revenues are from water sales. Some cities have wells that they can sell back water, and they have other revenue sources. The city of Bel Aire simply doesn't have those opportunities to do that. Major expenses account for the cost of purchasing water from Wichita, the cost for CCUA operations and debt service on the facility that they use to treat the water. All these expenses happen before the clean water even touches Bel Aire's borders, and we are dictated by agreements signed many years ago. To this day, we continue to work with our partners to lower cost. This leaves the remaining amount of all expenditures to be spent on staff, maintenance, and repairs of network and infrastructure through our city. We currently the city plans to use American Rescue Plan Act's ARPA funds to pay for water main replacement and improvements for 2022. This saves out of the water fund about $250,000. I did look it up, and the increase in the line item transfer, not an increase in rates, in the water from franchise fees was $54,500. So that was kind of our discussion forward on that particular instance. On the sewer funds, really about the same speech. Sewer is the exact same spot as our water fund. Nearly all our revenues are from sewers charges. The majority of our expenses are account for the cost of CCUA operations and debt service on the facility used to treat the wastewater. Again, all these expenses are dictated by agreements signed many years ago, and we currently working with our partners to lower cost. And again, we plan to use American Rescue Plan Acts to pay for water main relining and improvements for 2022. That saves about $300,000 out of the sewer, and the small increase in franchise fee transfer to the general fund is $44,813. On the other side, I'm just kind of going to run through some of our smaller funds on solid waste utility. All trash and recycling related revenues and expenses will be received and paid out of wastewater fund or a solid waste fund. Garbage trucks play a heavy role on our local streets. Therefore, we transfer $100,000 out of the solid waste fund and use them to repair our streets. The stormwater fund is funded for a $2 fee that is used for various drainage improvement projects throughout the city, such as culvert replacements. As you remember, in 2022, we left maybe $20,000 and we budgeted the rest to replace culverts and do what we can. A lot of that fund is opportunistic when we'll replace a culvert if the bids are right or if we have time. The special highway and street maintenance funds consist of revenues received from the state and county fuel tax. The 2022 budget for the street is more of a maintenance fund. Will primarily be used for street maintenance, snow and ice removal, and street lighting. Our bond and interest funds, more or less a pass-through fund as well. All special assessments received will be received in this fund and paid the debt out of that fund as well. The once mighty land bank has dwindled in the last years. Simply speaking, revenues in the land bank are generated by land sales and transfers from the general fund. These revenues will help fund special assessments on the remaining property in our land bank. The final slide is our budget calendar. What this action does tonight is sets the public hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate. And a budget hearing on September 7th, we'll hold both those hearings. We'll hold the first hearing, pass a resolution, hold the budget hearing, and then hopefully pass the budget. As you can tell, we've met quite a bit on this, and I'm here to stand for any questions if you'd like.
Very good. Thank you for the thorough presentation and brief. So, do we have any questions for Mr. Henry? Hearing none, I appreciate the presentation. Thank you. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve the City of Bel Aire 2022 budget as presented by city manager and staff for publication, and schedule a public hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate and a public hearing on the budget at the regular city council meeting on September 7th, 2021 at 7 p.m.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item B is Web Industrial LLC is buying Next Level Hoops and has requested an IRB for the purchase. The facility averages 40,000 visitors per year and will help solicit retail and hotels to Bel Aire. At the July 20th, 2021 council meeting, council approved the letter of intent to issue IRBs with property tax abatement to allow the debt of the building to be retired and the facility to break even. A cost benefit analysis was completed that showed a benefit of ratio of 1.3 for all government entities. A public hearing was held earlier in this meeting, and authorizing resolution now comes before council. Just as an added note, this actually showed up in the Wichita Business Journal today, so we got a little bit of notice there. So, are there any questions for staff or questions of staff or Gilmore and Bell? I see Mr. Gowan is here. So, any questions for either? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Elsoff.
I motion to approve a resolution of the governing body of the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, determining the advisability of issuing taxable and industrial revenue bonds for the purpose of financing the acquisition of a sports facility located in the city and authorizing execution of related documents and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Elsoff and a second by Mr. Welch. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and abstain on this one as well, since I know the person.
You abstain?
Yeah, I'll
I'm
go ahead and
sorry,
abstain.
I didn't give you the opportunity to speak up. So correct, the vote count on this vote is 3-0 and 1 absence. Dr. Schroeder. Moving on to item C. So Webb Industrial LLC has purchased 2 lots in Sunflower Commerce Park and will be constructing 2 25,000 square foot spec commercial buildings. As those are occupied, they will construct 2 more buildings. At the July 20th, 2021 council meeting, approved a letter of intent to issue an IRB with tax abatements to allow the facility to acquire tenants and reach max capacity before paying property taxes. A cost-benefit analysis was completed that showed the benefit ratio above 1.3 for all government entities. This resolution authorizes the sales tax exemptions, and the public hearing will be held at our next council meeting. Webb Industrial LLC is responsible for placing the IRB as well as all financial obligations. Are there any questions for staff or Mr. Gowan from Gilmore and Bell?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
I think I've asked something similar to this before, but since they're not building all the buildings at once, the IRB starts when the first building is completed or when it goes under construction and then lasts for a period of 10 years after that. So it doesn't matter how much other buildings they build.
Yes, so this actual IRB is funding the 2 buildings that they're constructing now, and then the tax abatement will begin once they're completed, so it'll actually be for next year because they don't have anything constructed this year.
Okay, but if they build the additional 2 buildings 5 years from now, they will get a lesser tax abatement.
So what they'll do then is when they're ready to build the additional 2 buildings, they'll request an IRB at that point for those 2 buildings.
Okay, so this does not cover all buildings on
No.
that piece of land.
Just the 2.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I move to approve a resolution of the governing body of the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, determining the advisability of issuing taxable industrial revenue bonds for the purpose of financing the acquisition, construction, and equipping of 2 office and warehouse facilities to be located in the city, and authorize execution of related documents and authorize the mayor to sign.
Motion for Mr. Smith. Do we have a second?
A second.
I have a second by Mr. Elsoff. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And Mr. Schroeder, are you abstaining from this as well? Okay, very good. Thank you. So the motion carries 3-0-1 with Dr. Schroeder abstaining. So moving on to item D, this is a developer of Rock Springs 3rd, Phase 2 is ready for paving to occur. And bids were accepted on July 27th. Following the bid letting, the developer requested that tree removal be removed from the project in order to save some cost. So Garver contacted all bidders prior to the bid tabs being sent out and requested they deduct the tree removal cost. Only Pareto and Kansas Paving responded to this request. The revised results are included in the staff report. So the cost of these improvements will be financed through a bond and spread as special assessments against the benefiting lots. So Garver Engineering is here to explain the bids and answer any questions. I guess Garver is not here, but Ann Stevens is. So we're glad to hear. Thank you.
Correct. This bid is for the paving improvements for Rock Spring 3rd, Phase 2. The water and sewer were just accepted for their final completion last week, so we're ready to move forward with the project. as when the project was bid, the developer, there is a tree row behind it's between the pond and then the units. And the developer had initially wanted the contractor to remove those trees. When the bids were accepted, the bids came in higher than the estimate, and the developer had several options. They could recommend that all bids are rejected, rebid the project. It is my opinion that unless there's a very significant change to the project, I don't like to rebid just because I don't want to waste anybody's time doing that. They have the option of requesting that the city work with a contractor to kind of try and get some prices adjusted to get it down lower. These would all be options that the city would execute on the developer's request. The developer, after looking at this, they decided, well, the trees can stay. And after looking at all of the prices, the tree removal, which was not a specific line item, it was lumped in with the site clearing and other items, that they decided, that's an item that was higher than we had originally anticipated. So let's ask all of the contractors to remove that item from their bid. And after consulting with the city attorney, we decided that the best way to go about that, since the bid tab was not sent out to contractors, the only thing that the contractors had at the time was the bottom number that was read aloud at the time of the bid opening, that asking each contractor to provide an amount of a deduct for that tree clearing was probably the most fair and honest way to go about that process. So Garver reached out to all 4 contractors. Cornejo and Pearson chose not to provide a number of a deduct for those bids. We just got a number from both Kansas Paving and Prado. And as you can see, the results changed the bid from Prado being the low bidder to Kansas Paving being the low bidder. I have spoken with the engineer who spoke with the developer directly, and they would prefer to go with the bid from Kansas Paving. So that is, if you have any questions, I'm happy to stand for them.
So just to clarify, the earlier motion we did in the consent agenda approved a higher application number. Is that the correct term? Petition, a higher petition number than what was originally petitioned, so that we can move forward with this item.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
typically when we bid, or often when we bid streets, we see a number for both concrete and asphalt. We only see one number here. When I looked at the details, it looked like it was concrete. I just want to confirm that that's correct.
That is correct. That was the developer's choice to not bid the both.
And then I just want to make sure I understand, all of the contractors knew all of the other contractors' total bid amounts before they were asked to provide the deduction for the tree removal. So Kansas Paving knew they were very close to Prado before they were asked to provide the tree removal deduction.
That is correct.
Okay. And Prado knew that Kansas Paving was very close to them before. Okay.
That is correct.
Thank you.
How long would it take to rebid this?
It would take roughly 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, because to me, this stinks. I think it should have been original or not at all. And I would prefer to accept Prado's bid, original bid, over taking Kansas Paving's revised bid under these conditions.
I guess I have some questions, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Elsa.
One thing that's kind of, I guess, somewhat confusing is the difference in the deduction between Kansas Paving and Prado. I mean, 33 grand to like 2 grand is a big swing. So could you speak to that, and possibly like when you say it was a hedgerow, like how many trees are we talking, or stretch? Can you give us an idea of like how many trees that would be?
I cannot give a count as to the trees because there's little trees and big trees and a whole bunch of trees all stuffed in together in the area. The area is probably about 12 to 15 feet wide by a couple 100 feet long. Actually, a representative from Prado came and met with me the day after these bids were taken and requested that the project be rebid and just completely. And after consulting with the city attorney, we both decided that there really wasn't enough of a change to rebid it completely. It is still an option. The city does not have to accept any bid at this time. But Prado also confided that they were using some, I guess, family labor to assist them in removing the trees. And so I think I don't know what all goes into their bid, but that was what they confided in me. So
Yeah.
I don't know what all went into Kansas Paving's bid to bring it down to 33.
Yeah. The only really perspective I have just from my personal experience is I had a single tree, a large tree with 4 trunks, but it was, over $1,000 for one tree. So like, that's what I'm kind of wondering about. So, okay. I guess the other thing was, it seems like the staff recommendation was for Prado, but you said that the developer requested Kansas Paving, or that was their preference?
So the staff recommendation was for Prado before everything took place. All the rebidding, or not the rebidding, but the request for deduction. And then, so that was before. I did not make a recommendation after. I left that up to council, how council chose to move forward with that. But yes, it is the developer's preference to move forward with Kansas Paving.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Dr. Schroeder.
And could you just briefly explain how these bids are originally done again? I know you've done it before, and if you could do it again. And then when you get done with that, just a brief explanation. Can you talk about how abnormal this is? I mean, it feels new to me. Is this new to everybody? Or can you just talk about how often something like this might be done?
Sure. So when a development project gets started, the developer hires an engineer through the city to design plans and specifications for the project. So that is the water, the sanitary sewer, the storm sewer, any grading on site, and the roads. Those sets of prints are sent out to contractors and asked to bid on the project. The engineer provides a set of quantities. You'll see the quantities on the bid tabulation, just the name of the quantity, the amount, the unit of measurement. All of those units of measurements are defined within the city standard specifications or defined in the project plans as to what a specific unit or item means. Contractors bid those items on what it costs them to perform those units of work. And then after the project is constructed, all of the units of work are measured. So the final payment is based on the unit measurement in the field versus what was originally stated. So the contractor prepares their bid, prepares a bid bond. If there's any amendments or addendum to the bid documents, they acknowledge those. They're placed in a sealed envelope and delivered to the city at an appointed date and time. Then I collect those bids. They are taken to usually the community room, read aloud, opened and read aloud at that time. So nobody knows anything else until we read them aloud. The typical plan is we usually just read the bottom price. Nobody ever asks for any individual items. Once those bids are read aloud, then the engineer takes them back to their office and tabulates them in Excel just to make sure that the unit price times the quantity equals the total, and then all the totals add up to the grand total of the project. Sometimes we find errors in that, sometimes we don't. And then that's where you get the bid tabulation that you have with your report. So as far as this statement or this situation with this kind of issue,
I think, and I would say a key part of that is the next step when the engineer publishes all the bids and advises the city engineer and all the bidders that X had the lowest bid. So in this process, we hadn't hit that step yet. Had we reached tabulation or not?
The bids were tabulated,
Okay.
but they had not been sent out. At the bid letting, it is announced the apparent low is so-and-so, but there's no guarantees made to any specific contractor at that time. I always let the contractors know that the bids will be considered at the upcoming city council meeting. So the bid tabulation was not sent out to any of the contractors prior in advance of asking them to provide a deduct for the trees.
But-
And then
Just to clarify though, now all the contractors have those bid tabulations for all their competitors and themselves, right?
that is correct. So at this point, in the last 3 to 4 months, I have been seeing more issues with bids coming in over the engineer's estimates. Most estimates have been prepared many months in advance of the bids being sent out to contractors. And really in the last 3 to 4 months, we have seen an increase in the price of concrete materials such as storm sewer pipes and inlets and manholes. And we've seen a large jump in the price of resin, which is used to make the plastic pipe that we use in our water and our sewer mains. We're also seeing an increase in the amount of work that's out there. And with the same number of contractors, they're getting very busy and don't necessarily have the time to devote. So the prices go up, kind of as your basic supply and demand. But in regards to the specific trees, I really don't see that very often. This is probably one of the first times I've seen it. It's something that developer thought could be easily taken out of the project and to reduce their costs.
What about other things? Maybe not trees, but another adjustment of, on a almost $600,000 bid that gets adjusted by 20, 30,000. Does that happen very often, even if it's not trees?
No, I have not seen it happen where you go back later and negotiate it a lower cost. Occasionally there is a period where there is something negotiated, but it's not done with this sort of process. It would be done with a change order. So we accept a bid amount for X, but then there's an understanding that a change order will be applied right after that bid to reduce the cost by a certain amount. I believe we may have done that with the Webb Road lift station. And there was a change order associated with that because it came in a couple $100,000 above the engineer's estimate.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
as I think about this, I think this is a bit weird, and I'm having trouble kind of picturing the trees that need to be removed and how that would change the project. But at the end of the day, I think the developer would probably need to go in favor of what the developer would like us to do here. I know that the developer is looking to move their project forward so that they can continue with construction. And I would hate to hold that up another 2 or 3 weeks. And I would also hate to, ask all of these contractors who Ann's already indicated are very busy to just go through this process all again, because it does sound like everyone had the same information and the same opportunity to adjust the bid based on the same information, even though that this was a bit non-standard. So everyone knew where they stood. Everyone knew, what the ask was to submit that deduction. And so while it does feel a bit odd to me, I think we should just let the developer move forward as they've requested with that bid. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to accept the bid from Kansas Paving at a cost not to exceed $550,753.40 for paving improvements to serve Rock Springs 3rd, Phase 2, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any additional discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Rousseau?
I guess in thinking about this as well, it sounded like you, Ann, that you had said that the developer decided that the tree removal was not necessary. Is that right?
That is
Or-
correct. His initial plan was to remove all the trees so the tenants could see the pond. And then he decided, well, this is too expensive. The tenants don't really need to see the pond.
Okay, so was that after he saw the revised bid?
No, that was prior. That was the reason for requesting a deduct for the trees.
So these are intended to be rental properties?
Correct.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith, or Welch?
I think part of the problem here is that you are telling us these people are busy putting out bids and they were asked at the last minute to revise their bid. And I do not think that's fair because they put all the time into this bid. It's a relatively small project for probably what some of these people are doing. And they probably just said, check it. We don't want to mess with it at this point. So I've already made my idea clear, I think, but
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I guess I hesitate just because, I don't know. I guess there's unknown. Out of the 4 bidders, only 2 out of the 4 submitted the revised bid. And one of the thoughts I had was, well, maybe just stick with the original bid and do away with the tree removal aspect. But I guess what is the current desire of the developer as far as the trees? They definitely, with the lower bid, now they want to have the trees removed.
The bid was for not removing the trees. If we had a specific line item in the list of quantities for tree removal, this would be very easy. It would just be simply deduct that line item from everybody, issue a change order with the bids, and we're moving forward. Since the tree removal was lumped in with the site clearing and several other items, it was not as clear cut. So the developer wants to leave the trees. So he has asked for the deduct to remove the item tree removal from the project. It's kind of a confusing, removing a deduction.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
to be clear, the developer has seen the revised bids and wants to move forward with the Kansas paving bid for $550,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question on behalf of council? Did the developer tell you why? Was it because Kansas paving was the low bid? Or was there another reason given for why developer wanted to go with Kansas paving? I just wanted to clarify that because it seems like council's assuming that.
The developer did say they wanted to go with the Kansas paving because they were the low bid. They also stated that they did not like the way Prado formed the curbs in the subdivision.
is that part of the specification on how they build the roads?
That is somewhat, there was an area in the previous subdivision that Prado built that was close to the specification, and it was discussed with the developer, and they said that it would be okay to leave. It wasn't perfectly exactly matching, but it was close enough. It was serviceable and useful as it was constructed.
So Prado now knows going in that they should do it slightly different.
That is correct.
And they came up with a bid that was $15,000 lower than the next closest bid.
That is correct.
Mr. Mayor?
Dr. Schroeder.
I think this is a little bit unorthodox, but I don't have, I mean, Kansas Paving we've worked with them lots of times. That's who the developer wants, the cheapest bid. I mean, I guess I'm trying to talk myself out of doing something different other than kind of those standard things I go with, and I'm just not, so I'm fine with going with Kansas Paving.
Mr. Mayor, could I add something?
Certainly. Mr. Lasher.
The difficult part, the struggle I have with rebidding is because the the detailed bids from every company was sent out. So now we're going to go back to the same companies. They're going to have known what everybody bid. And I think you're probably going to see Pearson, who for whatever reason was at 770, which is substantially higher. My guess is they're not even going, they'll either put the same bid in or not bid, because they now know that they were the highest bidder. Now, will everybody, now that they know what the low bid was, are they going to come down to that? Or are they going to say, you know what, that's a ridiculous bid, we're not even going to bid? Because as Ann said, you know, they get busy or for whatever reasons, you know, they're going to be at a higher. And so the struggle I have is, what are we going to get when we rebid? Because everybody is seeing the quantities and the bids. And so, you know, and I don't have the answer to that. That's just the concern I have, is when we rebid it, is everybody going to rebid? Is the numbers going to go up or down? We don't know. And then the last piece, which Councilmember Smith had mentioned and Councilmember Schroeder both mentioned, is that, you know, in the end, it's going to take to rebid it. You usually give them a month. And then to get the bids in, you know, we're talking 6 weeks that you'll see the new bids. It won't be in a couple weeks. And the developer is ready to move forward. They're the ones that really identify with these dollar amounts, because that's what the specials are. So if it was too high and the specials were going to be too high and they felt that they couldn't sell those lots, or that it was out of their range, they'd tell us to not go forward. So I think those are the concerns I have about rebidding and waiting. And now, if this was our project, and that it was a total benefit to the citizens as a whole, and we were okay, then maybe it'd be all right. But like I said, I just that's something that I don't ever remember doing, is rebidding a project, and I have a lot of concerns about that. I'm not saying that it wouldn't come back positive, but you know, what happens if we rebid it and they all come in at 600,000? Then the developer's not going to want to move forward, because they're all above what he wanted. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you. Mr. Well.
one of my other problems with this is the second time Prado's been cheated out of the low bid, because we've allowed something to change on behalf of Kansas Paving. So that's partly why I feel it's unfair that we went in and changed it after we started the bid process.
So, and that's, I understand that point. I think the one argument would be that they were given the opportunity to deduct whatever amount they wanted, and they were the ones that gave us the 1,700. I think the other thing about Prado, which you all dealt with, the last project that they were going to get, was that they, after the bids were all distributed, they came back and said, oops, we made a mistake. Our bid should be what, 20,000?
That was a different contractor.
Oh, that was different. Okay.
That was Dutton.
So I apologize. That was a different contractor, but I think it just goes back to the fact that they didn't see what they could have put any amount they wanted in there, and they were the ones that put the 1,700. So,
Mr. Mayor, I have comment and questions. I guess my comment is, I just wanted to just state that I don't agree with the word choice of Councilman Welch using. I understand maybe it was hyperbole, but using the word cheated, I don't agree with using that word. So he's not speaking for me when he used that word. Obviously, he's free to clarify that. But my question was, I don't remember, what was the timeline for response from the original bid, and then what was the time of response for the revision?
Contractors are usually given approximately 2 weeks from the time plans are sent out on these subdivision projects to the bid date. So they're given about 2 weeks, and then they were given 2 to 3 days on a response for the deduction.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more discussion?
I guess I should address the cheated. That probably was a very poor choice of words. but I do feel like something's affecting the bid process so that they're not being the one chosen. I don't know exactly how to say that without using a negative word.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I've been evaluating this, and I think in the end, considering everything we've discussed here, I think I'm going to weigh in favor of the motion that's currently on the table. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Vote passes 3-1 with Mr. Welch in the negative. Moving on to item E. Currently, Bel Aire code state that mayor's term shall be for 2 years, meaning the mayor's seat is up for election every other year. Previous governing bodies have discussed the idea of moving the term to 4 years, like city council seats. Changing codes can be done via charter ordinance or vote of the citizens. Council discussed this item at the 2 previous workshops and felt that this question should be on the general election ballot in November. Our city attorney drafted a question, which is on the agenda tonight. Are there any questions or suggestions for wording?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'd just like to say that I'm pleased with the revised wording that our city attorney and the election office came up with. I think that this addresses, the concerns that I had at the workshop. I did also receive some public feedback on this item, actually both for and against, and that I guess gives me further confidence in the decision to make this a ballot item versus making this a charter ordinance. That I think that there could be a lot of public opinion on this, and it's a pretty big deal to change the term of office for your elected officials. And so I feel really good about putting this on the ballot, since it's something that we think might be a good thing. Let's put it out there and let the voters decide if this is something that they want to do or not. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I think this is a really good thing. I'm super tempted. I was always been tempted to not put it on the ballot. I think it's just pretty. I just personally think it's a really good idea. I think the whiplash is a negative, but I've kind of always, even though I've always kind of settled back with, yeah, we should probably, this is a big thing. We should go ahead and vote on it, and I'm supportive of it. But I certainly hope for Bel Aire's sake and for staff's sake of having to deal with too quick of turnover that it will go. But I do think this is a big thing, and I still am in favor of going ahead on principle, having it be voted on, even though I'm quite in favor of it.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Elsoff.
So, yeah, I definitely was in favor of just having the council change it from 2 to 4 years, because I think most people will probably see this on the ballot and go, what? Oh, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the voters vote. So, it's cool. But I'll be voting for 4 years. I think I was surprised when I first heard the mayor was only 2 and the council is 4. It just kind of seems natural to do that. But we'll see what the voters decide.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, I'll motion to approve the following question to be placed on the November 2nd, 2021 election as stated.
I will second.
I have a motion by Dr. Schroeder and a second from Mr. Smith. And just a personal comment, I really am kind of neutral on this issue. I see the positives of getting it into the cadence of all the council elections so that you have 3 council members 1 year up for re-election and 2 council members and the mayor on the other opposing election cycle. So I think it's good in that respect. I also understand the 2-year term kind of keeps the mayor have to be a lot closer to the citizens, which is always a good thing. So I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I do believe letting the citizens vote on this is the right thing to do so that they can give us their feeling about this issue. So, hearing no other discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item F. So currently, Bel Aire codes do not address term limits, meaning a city council member may serve as long as they choose to run and are reelected. The governing body could implement term limits via code process or via a vote of citizens. At the June 8th workshop, council suggested this item be a question on the November 2nd general election. And at the August 10th workshop, council discussed the proposed question, and Jackie has created a draft, which is on the agenda. Are there any questions of Jackie or comments or suggestions?
If I can say, this is the one that changed the most based on feedback at our last meeting. This one, now it's clearly 8 years, and it's almost difficult to serve more than 8 years unless someone is appointed. So that's the change from last week's conversation.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
I just want to comment again. I'm sure some people have heard me before, but I do not think these are necessary, but I'm perfectly willing to let the citizens decide. If they think they are, then they are. So I'm ready to go ahead and move forward with them.
Mr. Mayor, I'm curious if anyone's received feedback on this. I sort of feel like we're solving a problem that doesn't exist, but I'm like Councilman Welch that that I'm fine with them too. I think that it's great. I tend to sort of have a feeling that we don't need to save the voters from themselves necessarily, and because this is virtually a volunteer position, I don't think a lot of us are fired up to do it the rest of our lives. So I'm not sure it's really solving anything, but I'm happy to let the voters decide on it. But I would be interested if anyone's had feedback on this. I know this is something that the mayor has been interested in, but I don't know if that's based on feedback or just a personal thing of yours or.
Well, to be honest with you, it was from feedback. I had talked with some citizens about the idea of the 4-year term, and they said they would be in favor of that if we had term limits. And having thought about that further, I thought, my own personal perspective, I don't really believe any elected office should not have term limits. And I know there are a lot of elected offices in the nation and some in the state that don't have term limits. And I think that we should be leaders in that area and put those term limits in place.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I haven't heard any feedback or requests either for or against term limits. Part of me thinks that this is likely a problem that we may not have here in Bel Aire, but I generally favor term limits and think they're a good idea. And so I think that this is another great thing that it doesn't hurt to put on the ballot. It's a good question to ask. I don't think it's been asked officially before of the voters. And so there's no harm in asking from my perspective. I would support it.
And Mr. Mayor, these are not lifetime term limits for the public. These are without consecutive terms. So 8 years.
Limits to the consecutive terms.
Correct. Just for the public's information.
Okay, so they could come back after a 4-year period and run for office again.
Exactly.
It could come back after a 2-year period, since council members are elected every staggered terms.
This requires a 4-year break for it to not count as consecutive.
It's specific to 4 years.
I guess I missed that. Oh, there it is. It's written out as 4 instead of as a number.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
make a motion to approve the following question to be placed on the November 2nd, 2021 general election as stated.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item G. This is a similar item, only it applies to the mayor position as opposed to city council for term limits. So again, we don't address term limits in our codes. So this is a question to put on the ballot. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns.
Mr. Mayor,
Dr. Schroeder.
I think all my likely the comments from the previous one all apply. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the following question to be placed on the November 2nd, 2021 general election as stated.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Schroeder and a second from Mr. Smith. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will have 3 ballot initiatives on the November 2nd ballot. So I have no need for an executive session. Does anyone need an executive session for any reason? Future issues, are there any issues to discuss that we need to bring up for later discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Elsoff,
I motion we adjourn.
I'll second.
a motion by Mr. Elsoff and a second by Mr. Welch. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Hour and 30.